Hi, I'm going to do something a bit different today. I'm going to go over just a bit of a review of a book that I've just read that I really enjoyed, but also I think it has a lot of ramifications for traders. So I want to sort of revert those back and reflect those back onto trading and hopefully provide some insights and ideas that will help. The book I'm going to talk about is Black Box Thinking by Matthew Syed. I just finished a few weeks ago his book Bounce, which I might talk about another time. Bounce is about how to practice and yeah, some high performance things there. Black box thinking is about marginal gains, and he talks about the secrets of high performance, but the effect of marginal gains and really on failure as well on high performance um, athletes and industries. In the book, he talks to, for example, Mercedes Formula One. He talks to David Beckham about taking free kicks in football. He talks to James Dyson about his products and how they evolved and became so successful. There are a number of interesting points to learn from that, and I want to revert them back to trading. So, as I say, I think they'll help. The book starts with a comparison, really, of the airline industry and the health industry to talk about learning from failure. As we know, the airline industry, are very much about learning from failure. When there's a plane crash, they immediately try and find out what went wrong, how can we learn. They accept the fact that there will be failures, but they don't accept the fact that they should just make the same failures again. So when they have one, they'll learn from it. As he shows quite, clearly, the health industry is a bit different. They accept the fact that people will die in hospitals, on operating tables, or operating theatres, but it is not the norm for them to go then and launch an investigation and find out what went wrong and how can they help other doctors avoid that mistake. That's not the norm. Now, subsequently, a couple of hospitals have instigated that type of approach and it's been very successful, but generally it's not the case. So what we find is that in the health industry, that their failure rate or the death rate amongst people is still quite high. So, a key theme throughout the book is that ability, that need to learn from mistakes. Don't just accept mistakes, accept that you're going to make them, but then you have to learn from them. So we're going to come back to that theme through the next sort of few minutes or so. Now, he starts off talking about the scientific approach of the fact that no amount of confirmation ever confirms a scientific theory. So as Taleb says in Black Swan, you can see 10,000 white swans, 100,000 white swans. It does not confirm the fact that every swan is white. Okay, one black swan diminishes and demolishes, that whole thought process. And being able to falsify something is a key part of science. It's a key part of being able to learn from something. Is the thing that you're being taught, and now I'm going to revert this back to trading, is the thing you're being taught, can you falsify it? Can you test it? And let's go back to something that we see a lot. I tweeted about this a couple of days ago on Twitter about TA. They'll use a level, doesn't matter what the level is, okay? You see people that call themselves order flow traders. They're just, often they're just different form of TA. But it doesn't matter if it's a 52-week high, a trend line, support line, doesn't matter what it is. They use a level. Now let's consider the statement, okay? If the market is above this level, and holds above this level, it's going up. But if it falls below that level and holds below that level, it's going down. Consider that statement. It cannot be falsified. That statement will always be true. It's not true because the level has any meaning, because it's robust, it's reliable. That statement is true because of the construction of a sentence. If you think about it, take any level. I could use 15s, 77s, 36, 94, doesn't matter what price I take in whatever market I take. If I take my 77 level and the market is holding and trading below it, then of course it's down, it's below it. But if it trades above it and holds above it, then of course it's gone up. Okay, it's got nothing to do with the reliability of that level. I could use that, I could pick any random level and make that statement, right? And it would be proven true. But it's not actually proven true. Why? Because you can't falsify that statement. Okay, now that approach, that using that kind of statement is something that is used in a skill called cold reading. And I've read some books on cold reading, and I did that after watching Darren Brown. A big fan of. I like what he does. If you believe in psychics and mediums and horoscopes and that, you won't like him and you won't like what I'm going to say. But cold reading is essentially the ability to make statements that apply to people or that can't be proved wrong. That's what it is. When you go and see a psychic or something, they're often just making statements. They pick up on your cues and they then feed into it. But a lot of the time they're making statements that really can't be proven wrong. You know, read a horoscope and come back and tell me there's anything really specific in there. It never is. It's always something quite general that can't be really falsified. Now, that approach in TA of saying, you know, if it goes above here, it's going to go up higher, and below there, it's going to go lower, that statement can't be falsified. Therefore, it's not scientific. Therefore, we can't learn from it. And therefore, we shouldn't be using that kind of approach. It's quite frankly, it's nonsense to think about it as being robust. It's not scientific. So, you know, that statement's made a number of times in the book, that kind of idea that you have to, it's not a scientific approach and you can't learn from it. And learning from losses is a big thing. And the book talks a lot. The one thing that all the successful people have in common, Mercedes F1 and Dyson and that, is the number of failures. And failures is a revolving theme in this book. It keeps returning to us. Failure, failure. Why? Because if you can learn from failures, it's the way you get towards becoming a high performance person, athlete, trader, industry, company. The ability to engage and learn from losses, it turns out, is essential. Okay, and in studies on people, they have people that have a sort of more fixed mindset. I'm always going to be kind of average. I'm always going to be this or that. Those people, as against a growth mindset. A growth mindset is, I can be better. I'll be better tomorrow. I'll be better next week. I can work at it. Obviously, we want that growth mindset. But in order to have that growth mindset, in order to really be able to grow, you need to be able to engage with losses and learn from losses. Now, if you're using a style, and I see this with majority of technical analysts that I know, when something goes wrong and it doesn't work, they're looking at their 2-minute chart and it shows them something, they draw a trend line and it you know, they're saying we're about to break higher when it doesn't happen. What do they normally do? They normally do what a lot of humans do when faced with failure. They don't like it. They don't like to admit they were wrong, so they reframe it. They draw a different trend line. They move to a different time frame graph and go, yeah, well, on my 2-minute graph was saying this, but the 10-minute graph, yeah, I should have looked at that more because the 10-minute graph was saying actually that was the opposite, you know. And really, that it's only hindsight you will ever. That kind of approach is, well, bull, frankly. But with that kind of approach, it's not a learning approach. You're not engaging with your mistake. You're just reframing it. And if you want a great example from the book of reframing, it was some scientists managed to smuggle people into this cult. The cult was predicting the end of the world. So people gathered around the house, and a couple of these scientists went in there. And obviously, on the day that or the night that they said that the world was going to end, the world obviously didn't end. So you would think that if they were rational human beings, they would just say, oh yeah, we were wrong. Yeah, the cult was wrong. Anyway, you know, off we go. Didn't work. But they didn't. Instead, they reframed the situation and they just said something like, oh, well, because we were gathered here and because, you know, this group of wonderful people were gathered here and we were, whatever they were doing in that room, that, you know, the world was spared. Now, they completely reframed it. They couldn't even accept that everything they'd been saying for, you know, in I think a couple of years it had been, was completely wrong. They reframe it, and that comes back to cognitive dissonance. Okay, humans don't like to admit, they don't like to be confronted with their mistakes, with their errors. They don't want to be. So most of the time, most people, rather than say, yeah, I made a mistake, they go, oh yeah, but there was this thing, or but that thing, or they reframe the situation. High performance individuals don't do that. They engage with their losses and they learn from them. Now, you know, for me as a trader, I've always believed that I learn more from losses than I ever do from profits on trades. You know, in my scalping manual, towards the end, there's a section where, you know, I break down a trade. These are the things that could go wrong with a scalping trade. And what I say to people is that, you know, if you have a loss, yeah, of course we're going to have losses, but we're trying to aim to be the best we can. So when you have a loss, go through that list. Don't trade again until you've worked out what went wrong, and then you can improve it. And I explain the ways that you would improve it. If this went wrong, you change it in this way. If it was this, you change it in that way. If you don't go through, and in fact you should go through sometimes your profits as well, just to make sure that they're okay, but go through and learn from them. That's why we aim for much higher percentage win rates. And I don't just accept a loss and just go one of those things like just another dead body in a hospital. I'll say, okay, I know I had a loss, I know I'm going to have losses, but how can I learn? That's how you get on the path to being high performance. And it turns out that with all of these, whether it's Mercedes F1 or James Dyson, you know, how many failures do they have? Loads. You know, and that comes to the next point, which is that success and high performance comes from marginal gains. Okay, So we make these small adjustments, we learn from the mistakes, we make a marginal gain, and that's how we improve. So for most traders, retail traders out there, you come into the industry and you kind of want, well, what is it that I'm going to learn that's suddenly going to change my life? Oh, and then that's why chart patterns and trend lines, if I can just learn to draw this, I can identify something and bam, I'm going to be making money. That's not how high performance works. It's marginal increases. And I know that some people, they'll look, retail traders will look at, for example, at the scalping manual that I wrote and say, oh, but there's nothing big in here. It's just all a bunch of little things. And that's the point. I don't apologize for the fact there's nothing huge in that manual particularly, nothing, massive, but I say at the beginning, the middle, and the end, it's about small things. Becoming a better trader, a high performance athlete. David Beckham didn't suddenly go from kicking a football to being able to bend 30-yard free kicks in the top corner. Okay, it was marginal adjustments all the way, thousands and thousands of practicing, and marginal adjustments. And too many retail traders come into the industry and they want to learn, what's that one thing that's going to change my life? There isn't. It's not going to happen. Okay, it's going to be marginal gains. And people, I've had, I see or I know that people sometimes get disappointed when I say, with the manual, that it's not going to be a big thing. It's going to be a small change. This small change will, maybe have this X improvement, and then you move on to the next small change. And if you look at the interview that I did with John on this channel, with John over that 2 years, it was continual small improvements. Nothing huge over the time. Now, though, if we look at John now to the John that I met, a couple of years ago when I first took him, there's a massive difference in him. But it didn't come from just, coming on my course, suddenly going from here to here. It came from here to here to here to here to here, and just gradual improvement. That's, and in the book, that's how Mercedes Formula One worked. That's how James Dyson works. He didn't go from, oh, I've got a great idea for a vacuum cleaner, bam, there it is. How many prototypes were there? How many mistakes? How many errors? Thousands. It's continually small. So if you're coming into the industry and you want that one big thing that's going to change your life, go and learn TA. They reckon they'll do that for you. Okay, that's not the way I approach it. I don't think that any high performance athlete anywhere thinks that really is the approach. I can just learn chart patterns and become good. No. If you want that approach, then you won't want to buy, my scalping manual. You won't want to get involved in that. It's about small marginal increases. And like I say, I think too many retail traders come into the industry wanting that big thing and not understanding its marginal adjustments that are the key, okay? And marginal adjustments, marginal gains are made from engaging in losses. So both of those things, I was really happy when I read the book, because those things are really the core of what I talk about in the manual, as well as the skills that we talk about and the market making aspect. It's that ability to learn from each little loss. It's also that ability to say that I'm not going to get from here to here quickly, I'm going to get from here to here in marginal gains. If you're happy to take that approach, then great. I think that's the way you're going to go. If you want something that's going to change your life, and what is it? And if I pay X amount of money for something, I want something incredible, just to jump off the page at me. It's not going to happen that way. So I was really interested, because I think that, from my perspective, when I look at that and I compare what I'm trying to do with other people from high performance industries, other good performers, I want to see, do I think I'm on the right track? If not, I'll change. Again, I'm happy to say, okay, it doesn't look like I'm right, I need to make some changes. Same with our hedge fund. We want to learn from our losses. If we find a trade that, whether from whatever way we've looked at it, and if we can't understand exactly why it works, or when it fails, why it's failed, we just won't accept it. From my perspective, I can never improve if I can't learn from it. And it's a key thing. So whatever you're doing as a trader right now, ask yourself, when I have a loss, can I learn from it? How can I learn? And be honest, or ask yourself, am I actually learning, or am I just reframing what happened after the event? Because to be honest, that's what majority of technical analysts do, right? And I know that some people get angry I keep knocking it, but the reality is that there's just no basis in it. And again, I keep coming back to, I see a lot of people, well, not a lot of people, but people that classify themselves as trading psychologists who also use technical analysis, and at the same time say they believe in behavioral finance. You can't be all of those, okay? Behavioral finance people actually use, examples of chart patterns and that as examples of poor decision making, of the ability, to basically just using patterns where we shouldn't be using patterns. So you can't take that approach. the reframing attitude of, well, this might happen, but this pattern might be the other way, or that trend line, that kind of being able to reframe something afterwards, that's just an example of cognitive dissonance, which is something that, behavioral finance people threw at us. We don't like accepting a mistake, so we reframe it. I'll hold my hands up, say, I made a mistake, what went wrong? Let's dissect it, let's figure it out. Like the airline industry. Yep, there was a mistake, I'm human, but let's figure it out, I can learn from it. And that's the thing. And people with a growth mindset, people that have that mindset of being able to get better, they engage with losses. They know they're going to make them, but they engage with them, they learn from them. Errors are important. Okay, Dyson had thousands of errors along the way to get to where he is. Same with anybody in that area, and it's marginal gains. So the key themes from the book: learn from errors, marginal gains. You get from here to here, okay, in anything in life by small steps. Don't think you're going to get there big, and really you should try and stay away from forms of analysis or trading that you think is going to just change your life tomorrow. Okay, and a lot of people promise that. Okay, of course, a lot of newbies get sucked into trading because someone says, you learn this and you'll become a great trader. It's never going to be that way. You will never become a great trader that way, okay? Or perhaps 1 out of every million might. So I really like the book. I might talk about bounce another time as well, because that's got some interesting stuff for us to talk about as well with trading. But if you haven't read Matthew Syed books, as I say, I've only just got into them, and they're very enjoyable. And as I say, I think as traders we can learn from them too.